I can share the screen that because we figure out a way to cooperate, we have a mirror platform that we put our ideas and keywords and photos, all the materials in a digital platform. So I can share the screen to present what we've been thinking about so far. Me and Gabby started to think about how about we generate like the photos or text or collage and then to see how our body to react to the environment.
Uh-huh. And this is not this portion is new, right? This is not on like week 6 or I think week
It is.
7 of your
Yeah,
brainstorm. Uh-huh.
we are starting to generate like it's also the form of how we collaborate. Like instead of choosing a subject and then we start from that idea, this is more like I feel it's more flexible and organic because we will start to accumulate the photos or this material and then see where this will go. So such as how like I think what you talk about the our experience based on how related to where we I'm from or which city I'm in, we are more focused like such as for me how I feel that the environment is how I feel through my body. But Gabby is different. That we talk a little bit about that last time.
So that's something you want to bring into your collaborative piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for me, I will see the traces like this kind of humans activity being proof on the materiality that I found on the street. Um, I think it's very bodily presentation of the objects around us in the city. But also, I'm like using my body as a form of a expression of this kind of self-recognition of my body part. But Gabby will approach the idea of the body. Gabby, you want to talk about your work
Yeah.
here?
It just is like
Before,
it can be like a sketch, and it's. I was working with a writing machine, and I tried to do the maybe how the a body moves or what is the environment around, or like I was thinking about space also through the lines and some signs, but it's just like the beginning of the thing. I think like at the end, then we will have more pictures. We will have a bigger image of our relations.
so Gabby, the drawing in the middle is right now you're working conceptualization of how you are working the body into this collaborative piece.
Yeah, I
Was it
was
something more?
even well, I was thinking about this and I was doing it.
I mean, there's two interesting things. I mean, there's many interesting things. In terms of Yi Hsuan, when she was talking about the body and the environment, there's another way that might be interesting to you to think about the body within the environment. And that is like a dichotomy of like microcosm and macrocosm in the sense that,
Microcosm.
yes, microcosm and macrocosm. So macrocosm would be the environment, and both of them are symbiotically connected. So then like your appendages or, parts of your body are your body, even though they are elements of it. The environment in a larger sense is also a body too, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so then you are an element of that larger body in one sense. That might
Mhm.
be an interesting way to think about the binary or the relationship between you in the singular and then the environment as like in plural. in
Yeah.
Gabriel's drawings here, the first thing that struck me was it seemed to me almost kind of like the type of information, which I'm just sort of throwing this out because I have no knowledge of it, but that's just the appearance to me, that it looks like information that one might find in manuals for like coding or other type of digital work, which then in the subject of the prosthetic and the digital that both of you are working in, coding and this type of sequencing can be seen as like the building blocks, in one sense, analogous to like red and white blood cells or something like that. I don't know, I'm just kind of tossing things out there. Maybe if I get more, because right now you're both thinking about the body and the environment, or Yi Hsuan, that's your concern at the moment.
We both think from this big umbrella and see what we can get from reach out different way.
Yeah.
And Gabby also create some text about this. But it's also as a reflection of like right now, because we've been communicating through this virtual space, and also because COVID time, and then
Are these texts going to be like independent works?
we are thinking to make a so far our idea is like, as for a level of we accumulate these materials, we will create a zine. A zine
A
could
magazine?
be
A zine?
not a
Okay.
zine is like another version of magazine, like.
Okay.
Like an artist book.
Okay, yeah. Sure,
Like
sure.
But the binding could be unfolded to present this kind of virtual space, this layers of information. But on the wall, we might choose the final two pieces on the wall.
if we will have an exhibition in autumn, but for the digital space, we need also to create somehow a space in a space. Yeah.
So will all the artists have both a digital artwork / presentation and then something that they will present in in a physical space that is then documented? Or that's just something that you two are doing?
It might be presented, but it's not sure at the moment.
Okay, that's just a possibility, an option.
Yeah. it's
Right.
possible. Yeah.
Because right now you want to get the material and then you want to see what would be the best way to present it, right? Good, very good.
I think also it's like we discussed about how this material could respond this kind of virtual dialogue experience. It's like this unfolded conversation, and then in the end there are two final pieces on the wall, but actually it's being hold this kind of dialogue in between. So we want to put that in the zine.
I think that's a very good idea. So then, I keep thinking that part of this will have not only the themes or subject or narratives that you have come up with in collaboration for this piece, but that there's might be a subtext or some other narrative component that has to do with the situation that we're all going through, or that's independent.
Maybe how do you think?
In other words, is it going to be specifically, because from what I'm seeing here, none of this, in one sense, it is addressing the pandemic because of we're forced to work digitally and we're communicating in the modus operandi we currently are. But do you want it to, you don't want it to emphasize that too much? Or do you want to talk about much broader things?
I think we don't want to emphasize pandemic too much, but because also I think virtual meeting will be a trend in the future, or
Yeah.
it's already been a long time for how people discuss and exchange thoughts in a digital space.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, so
But
right now you're thinking about how to express these, but right, you're almost certain that it's going to be a zine in some fashion, right? Like
yes,
a
we are
magazine.
thinking about zine, like maybe will come another mind or idea how to present, but we just need to keep going, you know, like we need to have a plan. We have like 2 weeks left, and then
Yeah,
like why not to make a zine? It's fun.
yeah, of course. It's also very accessible. You can materialize it, right?
Yeah.
In physical form, or you can keep it digital as well. And I think that also speaks to um, the concerns that you're working in and the subject matter of this collaborative piece that you're engaged in, and as well as the sort of larger. Um, it certainly speaks to the analog and the digital, right?
Mm.
It was
Yeah,
printed
exactly.
out, etc. Um, so it's definitely addressing that concern as well. And so you think that it will be text and then sort of, because I know that so you you work in sculpture, Yishuan,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Gabrielle, a lot of her work, your work is collage.
Yeah, I'm working with the collage installations. Like my background is painting,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, I try different mediums. Like I tried drawings or collage, painting,
Okay.
or sometimes video. I want to work with sound more also.
So in the zine that will be the format, it will have collage, um, imagery of sculptures or photographs of other things, text pieces like we're looking at here. Can you dream? Where are you at this moment? Are you real? Will it have those elements in
Yeah,
as
I
well?
think so. Yeah, I think like it would be nice to put a text and an image, and it depends what we will bring through these weeks.
What about a video work? You might, have you thought of that? Will that be included? Any video work?
Yeah, maybe. We
Okay, good. Very good. Very good.
because it's
Um,
like in a digital form, a zine, like a book, and with a video, it can be fun also.
Absolutely. And it would be interesting to get it to get a hard copy and then maybe include a USB stick of the video or something.
Mm.
Turn it into like, I mean, I hate to sound like I'm fetishizing like you know, a gallery system or the art object or the commercial side or something, but it would be interesting to have um, your zine, um, I don't know, an edition of like 20 that are signed by the artists and so forth, as a kind of, not as a document, but like as a work of art, because that's what this is. So I think the approach is quite interesting where you're at right now, but you must be at a very, you have this 2 week, you're supposed to submit everything, I guess, your deadline? No, good,
No.
very good. So then you have a little bit of time, but I think the the mountain that you both of you've climbed already is to actually agree on the subject matter or the theme of your collaborative project. And as I was saying before, I think this is very interesting because not that other projects are not interesting, um, and the ones that I've heard from Sneak Peek, they all sound fantastic. But you're taking it like a different approach. I don't know whether maybe some of the other artists were doing something um, thematic in this fashion that did not have references to the individual cities that the artist participants were living in, which is interesting too. Um, Absolutely. But I think by doing this project in this way, this subject here has a very personal side, as those other projects would as well. But there's something here that's also, I think, transcends that locality and has a much sort of broader ability to speak to people. That's just what it seemed like. So in your working process, did you ever have any? I mean, it seems like you both have a very amicable personality, and you're very assured in your working modes. But sometimes maybe I was picking up things wrong in a sneak peek. But there was one moment where it almost sounded like there was. I don't want to say conflict, that's too strong of a word, but you know, artists are very, as people are, they're very individual entities. And I guess what I'm getting at, was there any tension between you two when you were working in this collaborative piece?
I will say in the beginning, I found it very exciting that we have a lot of similarities, but we also agree that because of our similarity, it's hard to start to make the work. And I think so that's why we've been trying few weeks, and then that's why we jump into this approach that be more flexible and then see what we bring in. So I found out such for me, I use my body, I show my body part as how I feel I present, think about my body or my body with the environment. But in Gabby's work, Gabby told me that she doesn't like to want to hide her body. Like we kind of have a different thought about how we access to our body. And then I think that's interesting.
Sure. I mean, from what I was looking at your websites, you both do approach the body, as you said, and there is a performative element in your work where the body is present.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the presence of your body is you become like also this body of which other people can project their interpretations of who this person is and what this art piece is about. It's not like behind me that Gilbert and George record. I mean, that's obviously like Gilbert and George. But when we see your body, the lack of its specific identification allows it to become more like a canvas or like a sign, if you will, that allows people to interpret what this body could signify in this artwork. So your body is definitely present there. And with Gabriel's work, even the photographs, what seemed to be her actual body that were very abstracted, the body is present, but the body is absent, like in her collages as well. There's a very strong element of the corporeal there. And specifically her experiences, because by the nature of way that she composes her work. So it's kind of, well, you both have your like signature styles. So her body's there, but it's there in absentia, we could say. But it's no less present. It's just, you might think it as a sort of more, you both equally have a kind of conceptual approach to your work. But in her case, there is this sort of absent presence, I think, that it speaks to the body, but yet it's not like present in the more sort of sense of how you use your body. And so it was probably, I think what you were just mentioning here, that you both have similarities. So it may have been a very interesting needle to thread when you're working on this collaborative piece, that you want it to be something uniquely a collaboration rather than like two artists who bring their two works together, and that which is okay too. But I think it would be more challenging, and I think both of you are getting at this, to include parts of your work, aspects of who you are in your work, but that it becomes this work becomes greater than the parts. In other words, the sum is greater than the parts that go into it. So it becomes a unique work. even though it's made from these artists who share similar interests. And I think what you're saying, it was difficult for both of you to kind of like, you bring your work in, but at the same time have to maneuver the collaborative process. You want it to be something, at least in my opinion, I would think that you would want it to be a work that would like stand on its own as a unique piece. In other words, if that collaborative piece and then both of, let's say, other works by you were in an exhibition, you want that collaborative piece before anybody could ever read the labels of who the creators were, that they would think that these are three different artists. So I would try to keep that in mind. You want that collaborative piece to be very unique and stand on its own. So that when you see, if you like 3 works of yours in a show, one by Yi Hsuan, one by Gabriele, and then one that you both collaborate, before anybody reads any information, it looks like, oh yeah, these artists share similar concerns and similar narratives. That's why they're grouped together in this 3-person show, but these are like 3 different artists. So you might want to think that as you continue in your endeavor to make this collaborative piece, to try to make it like something that's like, as if it was somebody else had made that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I think it would like reveal, it's more challenging and the stakes are higher because it's like more work that you have to like think out and probably, you know, be more self-critical, like, oh no, this is like starting to look too much like each of our work. But let's try to make a piece that looks like a work that stands on its own, that's a collaborative piece rather than like, you know, I mean, if you look at like, probably some of the most famous collaborative works by different artists, one that came to mind was like Warhol and Basquiat, right? When they made those paintings, I don't know if you're familiar with them. I mean, you can easily tell right away who's who, but yet together it was quite of an interesting work, even though you could see a mile away that that's Warhol and that's Basquiat. In this sense, you want people to be like, I can't, you know, you want to, oh yeah, I'm aware and I know Yi Hsuan's work and I know Gabriele's work, but I can't tell, you know, whose hand is where, right?
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's
better.
more interesting to make something like that, right?
You mean that's better, right? Like jump out of the impression that what we made before, and then
yes, I think it would be a lot stronger. It would be a lot stronger presentation, and I think it would also be something more challenging for each of you, more demanding. And I think both of you can certainly have the creative capacities to attain that. But I think it would be more gratifying at the end. That like, oh wow, this looks like a whole different artist. So that might be something you might want to think about. But like I said earlier, that takes a lot of self-criticism because you have to think like, oh no, you have to see that, oh no, I see myself in there too much. I need to transcend that because we're working together, right? This is like a different entity now, rather than 2 artists coming together. And that also kind of, in a very conceptual way, that sort of works with the concept of the prosthetic that you're working here with, right? The prosthetic as a kind of not just a physical appendage, something that's incorporated into your body to facilitate the body's ability to do what it's supposed to do. But in this case, it's kind of more like a conceptual appendage because now it's like it's a prosthetic, but it's like has to do with like art and your imaginations that are kind of like fusing. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
It can become something new. Like
it's an abstract thought of prosthetic of how we exchange the thoughts, right?
Yeah, definitely.
To create something new.
That's a very beautiful way you address. Yeah, before I'm kind of really stuck in the concept of a prosthetic, and you keep thinking about different body part, but I just feel it's not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think how you address this idea of prosthetic, I can feel more free to.
Sure. I mean, it's usually when you think of prosthetic, because of the way it's been historically appears in one sense, it almost seems like, well, it's not really, it's not the arm that I was born with, but it's something else that replaces it. So it's always got this kind of negative connotation in one sense. But we have to realize that obviously, regardless whether it's a replacement to something, it plays an important role for the well-being of that person, but that the prosthetic can also be something much more, like, let's say, something that gives you an extension to reach something across the room, or a digital prosthetic, something that gives you the ability. I mean, in one sense, we're so like used to this virtuality that like before we had Zoom, or even before phones, because you could obviously do this with phones, but like, you could say, I'm going to speak to somebody in the future, and people would like laugh at you. But like right now, in Vilnius, at like, what time is it in Vilnius? 6 p.m.?
It's almost 7 p.m.
7. So in 5 hours, I'll be talking, if we were going to continue for 5 hours, which we certainly could, we would be talking to Gabe, somebody in the future. But of course, we think of it like, so what? That's like, it's not that big of a deal. But often these little technological leaps and bounds are, in one sense, kind of like a prosthetic, right? I don't know, it's just something maybe to think about when you do your collaborative piece. It would be, I think, more of a challenge to do something that has your signature, that has your artistic voice in it, but at the same time, it's something unique that you would never arrive there without. You couldn't arrive at this piece, Yi Hsuan, without Gabriel, and Gabriel, you couldn't arrive without Yi Hsuan. So now it's like a different thing. So it's like an entity unto its own, which is like a prosthetic, right? It's like, but it's on the level of like the imagination, and who knows, that could be like what the future is, right? Body, a consciousness without a body, if you will.
Yeah.
But I like what you're doing about the zine, because it's a throwback, but at the same time, it's very contemporary, right? Because I don't know what others are doing, but in the world of today, with all of these applications, a zine is like, it's almost like a radical statement unto itself, right?
Yeah,
A radical
it can
format.
be like a manifesto.
Yes, exactly, a manifesto, right? You might even try to, have you been thinking about the title of your project?
Not yet.
Okay, but you said manifesto, that might be interesting to give it that kind of air, quality to it.
Yeah, because you can say your opinion, you can say your position, you can say where you are at the moment, you can say or speak about future, about actually whatever, everything you want.
Yes, like for instance, some of the statements that you already have, and I think some of the things that you, some of the, I don't know whether it was in week 7, it might have been from after, the first week was like the selfie video, right? And then the second week you begin to kind of, you got more acquainted with each other. Now, I don't know the process. Were you two contacting, were you told that like, whenever you contact each other, that it should be recorded, or there should only be a certain amount of meetings?
It depends on us. It
Okay.
depends how we want. And actually, what you saw, these videos were recorded after our talk.
Uh-huh.
So actually, we decided from last time to have a meeting and to record in exact time, because after we are kind of lose our natural, I don't know how to say, natural thinking, and then we, after our meeting, we have kind of another meeting with a recording, and it's like an acting, like, oh, what to say, yeah.
So it felt
We feel we need to structure and discuss what we're gonna say and then record. But somehow, yeah, it loses that kind of very true response.
But I mean, the videos that you posted, it seemed very natural and organic and not scripted at all. I don't know whether you whether you were in contact with each other, which is the original question I was asking. Whether you were like, oh yes, when we record, we want to cover these areas and so forth. Because even though like I was like the email that was said that I should like investigate each of your work and have all these questions. I was like, should I make like all these dozens of questions? And then it can be kind of like anxiety producing. But then, I did know something about both of your work and the structure of the program. But then coming in here as that's why I wanted to have this more like a dialogue, because there's something where things can be revealed, or things that you later find out that you said at the moment you might not have been aware of, but you're recording it, that has like a lot of value that wouldn't have been arrived at if you like, oh yes, we're going to talk about this and my questions. Sometimes that kind of structure can be very stifling, in other words. So that's what I was asking about your MO, about how you were doing these videos, because it seemed very like you were having a discussion and anything goes, right? And so it felt very authentic in one sense, the way that you were going about and arriving at what you were going to do. Is that true? Right?
Yeah, I see it. It works. It really works. So yeah, it's like that. Yeah, it's very natural.
For based on the project, I have a question. Like, how do you think about the locality? Like me present us in New York environments, and Gabby present something. How that idea of a locality will influence overall this project, or we like we shouldn't think about this as something we need to put in.
Well, I think in the sense of like, by one's very nature of who we are, right? I mean, we all have, even if like I didn't move to New York when I was raised and where I grew up at, or even where I was born, there's still an aspect of, for the most part, heterogeneity. It's really difficult. Maybe I haven't traveled enough, but it's very difficult to try to sort of think that everywhere is not somewhere at the same time. In other words, I remember somebody, one of the other quote unquote consultants, and last year was talking about New York, and that New York, that you have like New York inside of you and this and that, because each of the three participants, the consultant, I think, was living elsewhere, but he had lived in New York for some time, and as well as the two artists were actually, one was in Flanders and the other one was in Poland. I mean, it is a kind of romantic notion, but about saying that like quote unquote, like New York is inside of you, so to speak. But the thing is that like we all come from places that in one sense have this texture to them, and that it is at the same time local, but we live in a world that it's very almost impossible to eradicate, like, I don't want to call it the other, or but eradicate those things that come in and do and sort of make it much more than a local space. I don't know whether what you were getting at in terms of what that both of you wanted to include something about. I mean, I think the places that where you work from will somehow come out in your work in some fashion. I was especially aware of this in the collages of Gabriele because of, I mean, I spent some time in Eastern Europe, and I was in Vilnius in 2019 for a show at the Jonas Mekas Center. And there is that kind of post-Soviet aesthetic, kind of brutalist architecture that's very much a part of the city. And when you use that in your work, you can't that doesn't escape. You can sense that and feel that. So I think that even if it's a unique work by these two artists, right? I think that the locality of where both of you are working will somehow make its way in. It's a tricky thing to try to start off by saying, well, I want to bring in my place where I'm currently living in, and then next thing you know, it's just some kind of signifier, like a flag or whatever it might be, where it becomes sort of too obvious, maybe too easy of a way out. There's other ways to bring in the place where you're addressing your work. And especially in the case of Yi Hsuan, where, you're Yi Hsuan, sorry, where you're born in Taiwan, and you, like myself, also, I presume, an immigrant. And so you have this other dimension to your work, and that always, you carry that with you, whether you're in New York or whether you're in Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles or Chicago, or even like Flagstaff, Arizona. I mean, these are all highly different cities in the United States. So I think that your work will always be flavored by that locality because of your own subjectivity that's going into your artwork, that it's kind of already present. So I think your question was, should you try to make it much more apparent? I don't know whether that was your question. Try to incorporate that you're from New York, or, that you're living in New York, and that you have this other history that is a part of where you're at right now. And I guess the same thing could be said with Gabriele. But there's also the personal histories that we have too, our subjectivity. I remember in your brainstorming that you brought up the word queerness, right? And as a kind of subject position. And it's true what you said. Usually, if someone thinks the word queer or queerness, they immediately thinks it has something to do with sexuality, which in one sense it does, but on the other sense, so does many other things that might not immediately alert one to sexuality. But it's much more of a space of affirmation and assertion. In other words, you seize this sense, this position to affirm your rights and express it. Yes, it could be sexual, but you express it in so many other ways, because life is not just about sexuality. And so you express the queerness in art and your relationships that don't have to be of a sexual nature, just queer friendships that are not based on like other types of sexual orientations or I mean, there's a whole history of like patriarchy. I mean, there's all kinds of things in which I think what Gabrielle was getting at with that word, which would come into her own work, which I think is what you're saying about locality as well. So I think locality will appear in the work in some fashion, and it might be more interesting and successful artistically to make it as more subtle and conceptual as possible, rather than make
Obvious.
it sort of overt.
Mm.
If you do this like really when I mean successfully, that it's gives you both pleasure and that it gives you a sense of affirmation that you did something that you believe in. But I also think in a more interesting way too, is that this allows you another imaginative like possibility of continuing to work like that with others, in which now the prosthetic is like the body is the imagination. Like prosthetic, you know, could be like your physical body, right? So that's tangible and haptic. And then the prosthetic is that thing that's a substitute for something to replace something on your body. In this case here, the body is the imagination, which is like intangible, right? And then the prosthetic thing is actually the artwork. That's the atomization. That's the concentration of that thought and that imagination and the artistry and the aesthetic and the ideas that go into that. That's so. I think you're both on a very interesting path. I don't know whether you all have the kind of interest in like philosophy or something, but your ideas are quite interesting, I think. Did that help any about your
Thank you
notion
very
of
much. Yeah.
So helpful.